we were okay with the number that then ultimately the president, and I'm not proposing this because I am the president, I'm just bringing it up for discussions. That in some cases the president would be the tiebreaker. So I think we need to think about that piece of it as well, and then have a further discussion because this is new to all of us, but it certainly makes sense given our focus on professional development and the posting of the Dean of Ideas that is out there as well. But I would agree completely with Susan's assessment that the Ideas Committee should recommend who is here. I want to state for the record that I want to be hyper aware of what could be intentionally making this management heavy, because that has never been the goal of this group. So for the record, I have no involvement in that piece of it, but and now just as I was going through the roll call, be hypersensitive to that. Like we know that one of the proposals would ultimately lead to Margot, who's faculty, being here. The ideas piece would depend on who that voted to be a member. So it could be classified, could be anyone in our organization. Any other thoughts or questions about that? Hearing none, we will move on to an update on something that is very, very exciting. Not that adding 2 more people to the college council isn't exciting. John, you want to walk us through an update on our housing, affordable housing development?
Absolutely, thank you. In the handouts, we have 2 renderings of the schematic design of the housing. The Chancellor, Vice Chancellor Joel Peterson and I took a trip up to Orange Coast College last month. They completed student housing right in the midst of COVID 2020. Their units actually did a pretty good job. Our intent in going there was to, one, meet with the architects management company that's managed by a third party company and the employees of the college for some best practices and do's and don'ts. Gleaned a lot of information, so it was a very successful trip, some of which we will incorporate into our design, and we already have after speaking with an architect, and I'll explain briefly. So let's just page on it. Let's go with the street view. I can't see the page on it, but I guess they're both street view, but not the elevated view. We'll go with the street level view as if we're standing on the street. It looks like 34 or page 14, sorry. So this is the rendering. You may have seen, this might be the 3rd iteration. Keep in mind, the first one was from the facility strategic plan. It was kind of preliminary, conceptual. Then we refined it with SGB&A for the bond. And now that we've selected Michael organization as the architect, this is more of the complete conceptual design. You'll note it's about 7 stories, and currently it's named Smith Hall. I told the chancellor that it'll cost him $25 million to get his name on there as Smith Hall. But we'll have.
But that is a placeholder.
It's a placeholder.
Yes. Where that grows laid. It's not being called Smith Hall.
That was the.
It's going to be Shabazz Hall.
That was the architect that stuck that in there, so it is just a placeholder. I'm not seeing it on the back here, but what we're looking at is the entrance. That's going to be the main entry point into the complex. On the other side, we don't have a rendering here yet, but I will have an update on our website, so stay tuned. It will have "You Belong Here" side that is facing the 5 freeway, so it'll be pretty prominent, be lit up at night. This is comprised of approximately 800 beds. I think it's 790 something, 791 beds amongst just under 300 units, about 282. There will be single units, double units, and 4-bedroom units. Will include a food pantry, offices on on the first floor, open air courtyard, if you will, for students to relax, plug in their laptops, and even a screen for movie night, if you will, presentation. I'm still on the street view of you, right in the middle of the page. Looks like a little penthouse on top of the brick there.
Don't show them my house.
Don't show them your house. Don't. There you go. Rumor mill again.
President's living quarters.
Dr. Shabazz penthouse.
Yeah.
That was originally proposed as a deck or a patio, if you will, where we could host events there as part of civic or something with the students. After visiting Orange Coast College, they highly dissuaded us from doing that. They have one. It's only 2 stories up. This is 7 stories up. They don't use it because of the liability risk factor. So we incorporated that, went back to the architects. It was open air design. Now it's enclosed. It is going to be a room, if you will, or a space. It's a little larger. It's not to scale because it has to be under a certain square footage in order for it to not be considered an additional floor in that tranche of the building. So they're giving us the specs, but this is the high level conceptual design. It will be revised as we proceed towards bond. Everything at this point is contingent on the bond passing in November. If it does not, we'll go to a P3 public-private partnership with a expected groundbreaking or grand opening in fall of 2028. So exciting stuff. Like that, or any questions?
Would like to have, before we open up to questions and build on something John said about the bond piece versus a partnership. We are building this. It is underway. And Angel, give me the cue when you're ready, or if you're ready. I want to do a flyover. If we can't figure out how to do it, we will send it to you. So we are building this one way or the other. What will determine the cost is whether we're able to build it with bond. If we can build it with bond money, then it will be an affordable housing development. If we have to go into this development with a developer, then some of these 200 plus apartments are going to have to be at market rate, 300, right? And so I want to be clear about that. Our goal from the beginning was to build affordable housing. Now there are really 2 things that are impacting that. One, we announced that we were successful with John's leadership and several others in securing $75 million from the state. The state is pulling some accounting measures that may cause us not to access that 75 million with the bureaucracies and red tape as the state has found itself in this budgetary situation that it is in. So that $75 million is no longer as desirable for us to use and to build as it was presented when we went through the grant process. Meaning they moved the goalpost, they changed the rules. So that's the first thing that is impacting affordable housing. The second thing will be whether or not the voters of San Diego approve our bond measure, which requires 51%.
Yes.
50%.
51.
51%. And so for those of you who are out talking to your colleagues about the great things going on at City College, if they live in San Diego proper, please put a plug in there for them to vote yes on our bond, which is 3.5
billion.
3.5 billion, which then would afford us the opportunity to ensure that this is an affordable housing development. Difference between the goal of having $1,000 per person in downtown San Diego, which is unheard of, versus market rate, which would mean some of the units, if the bond does not pass, could be approaching $3,000. And we know that our students just frankly, some of our employees can't afford, would not be able to afford $3,000. So that is something that is somewhat out of our control, because we do not have cash in hand to build this. We have to go out and either develop this with a partnership and or by selling bonds. Questions, and I just wanted that one for the record and also to share because this is changing from our original presentation, which was and it continues to be our desire to build affordable housing to house upwards of 800 students. The other piece that I'll end up with and open it up to questions. You'll see here the rendering shows the deck open.
Yes.
You see in the photo we presented that we now know that needs to be enclosed. As we enclose it, we're actually going to get 2 or 3 other apartments out of it because it'll be smaller.
Correct. And I just wanted to add to what you were explaining, the reason why it would be less affordable or maybe in some cases unaffordable is because if it's a developer coming in, they're gonna wanna maximize their return on investment. Hence it would be less affordable since we would not be accepting SB 169 dollars. We would not have to comply with that. So there would be some affordable units, but there would be some market units so that they can recapture their ROI as fast as possible.
Yeah, and we intend to do programming here, but we do not intend to run the housing development. There may be some city college employees involved in the running, but the developer who we've partnered with, Michael's Foundation, went to the board for approval, have been on campus a number of times. They are actually going to run this, and so they will staff it. And they will run the day-to-day operations so that Marciano and his team, you have flashbacks?
I am.
From
Trauma.
From student. That is Marciano's original background is in student housing. He was an RA and RD, he's an RD for a number of years. Questions that folks may have? Yeah.
So you said that the original 75 million you will probably not get, and then but more specific about why. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Yes, and John, I'll need your help, but in general, the governor, so when we applied for, and this was somewhat misleading. So when the grant was introduced, the state was in a better financial situation, so it was a grant. We applied for a $75 million grant. And we're told essentially that it was a $75 million grant. And we know that grants mean you don't have to pay it back. It has now changed twice from the initial grant that was pushed out. It went from it being a grant to it being a state bond.
We could issue bonds and we were responsible for the debt service.
Yeah. So, and that's a technical term. The simple term would be like an interest-only loan, right? Then it just recently morphed with the signing of the state budget a couple of weeks ago, and I don't have the information.
There are stipulations and conditions which make it really challenging for those who want to build without getting into a lot of detail. So as Ricky alluded to, it's like moving the goalposts. Like it's not originally what was awarded to us. So
or presented
to us or awarded to us. So it really complicated, and I think that was by design to dissuade some of the schools from taking the money and making it more difficult to report and track.
Is that
Yeah, can I ask a
Sure.
follow-up question? So does that mean that we won't take any of it or?
Correct.
Okay.
and that could change tomorrow because we're waging a campaign against these changes with our local representatives. So if we're successful in mounting that campaign and getting some of these bureaucracies that were not originally in the grant, then yes, we will. But looking at the provisions as it exists today, we've done an assessment and it's not worth the measures and hoops and headaches that we would have to jump through in order to access the 75 million. We do believe that they did that on purpose.
Yes.
Because of the condition of the state budget.
Then we wouldn't accept the 75 million because it's only by the time we get there going to be about a quarter of the price tag. So we would be tied to those stipulations and a P3 partnership if the bond is not successful.
Yeah, and it has to do with the cost to build and what kind of materials you have to use and what kind of approvals you have to use. Initially, when we applied and we were in the second round, the folks in the first round just got a grant because the state was in a better financial situation. They've now changed the provisions and the parameters for those of us that were in the second round that has made it not as desirable to try to access that $75 million. Yeah, and so it looks like Angel has, we have a flyover that shows the facility.
Is there any sound to this?
There is, but just, I mean, I think if you just, so this shows the location, which is the Old Child Development Center.
Well, now you get to see you belong here. Freeway stop.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to show them.
Oh, okay.
Since you had referenced that, right? So this is facing the, what is that, the 5 freeway. This now is across the street from Garfield High School. And now you're seeing across from the BT building. And there will be more information shared. Caesar is working with John on an article that'll appear in our monthly newsletter for August, and I will have the most up-to-date rendering in my convocation presentation. But this is exciting. We are still on schedule to be the first community college in San Diego County, and specifically south of Orange County,
Yes.
that has student housing. I think that's a good place to maybe stop, and then we'll send this video out to you also.
And we'll have it on our website.
Any other questions? The housing is going to be primarily geared toward veterans, former foster youth, formerly incarcerated students, and full-time students. You can imagine an institution as large as ours with over 20,000 unduplicated students, around 14,000 a semester. While this is exciting, it's just really going to be tinkering with the edges with the number of students who are facing homelessness. But you've got to start somewhere. It's a great opportunity to start with a building that fits the landscape of downtown San Diego and offers our goal, assuming we can pass the bond, and we hope we have everyone's support to pass the bond, to be able to offer a student between 1,000. Our goal is 1,000. Now, I say that today. Now, we know the cost of construction, anybody who's done remodeling or had to build something, that is also going to weigh, into this, as the target move-in dates for the first students will be the fall of 2028. John, I would ask you to work with Adon to do this presentation to ASG as well, so that they have an update on what's going on. Sure. Any questions? Yes.
Can you repeat the target population?
Fall population?
Yeah.
Full-time students, veterans, foster youth, former or current. Formerly incarcerated, justice impacted. That is this single parents is something we are working on. We would like to. Having children adds to running the facility. That was a group that we targeted. That is still up for discussion with the Michaels organization because of the configuration of the rooms is where it starts to get tricky. And ideally, I mean, let's just be honest. If you had a student who had 4 children, then you limit the ability to have 4 students in that same space. Does that make sense? So there are only so many single units, double units, and units that would hold 4 people. whether those people are children or whether those people are adults. And so for every family we take, and this is where it starts to get complex, that the secondary effects, right? And so would we like to offer students with children? Yes, but know that the secondary effect of that is if I have 4 children, then that is 4 students who we reduce the total number of students who get that get housed in the facility. Questions? And so what is that, when is the determinant going to be made? Frankly, as construction is occurring and the cost of actually building these units is when we'll cross that bridge.
Just a real quick question. It's probably far too premature. Often, I think you're right. Managers would be operating with this. For the internet process of people to these time. There has to be some sort of system, some mechanism, so that there's 2 ways. One, how to get it in, but also how to leave. So is there an expectation that students who are take advantage of these what they like release only 1 year and then they have to visit to see what they're close to eligible, they get booted out on.
So the answer to that, and I don't know, John, if you want to elaborate more, that was part of the reason why the team went to go visit the college in Orange County, right? And so as I understand it, you want to take this?
If I think I understand the question, so it'll be reassessed every year based on students' say conduct and enrollment status.
Enrollment status.
Yes, enrollment status, definitely. So we're committed, and this is year round. Marciano can attest to this in most colleges and universities, students move out during some institutions. This will be year round for us. To answer your question, the short answer is yes. The enrollment status will be reviewed.
And this is also to like Mona, your question, the 75 million that we initially went after absolutely had provisions for who could qualify to live here. This is another reason why we decided to move away from the 75 million as it gets more stringent and focused. But what we learned, Robbie, to your question, I hope this was your question. If it wasn't, it still is worthy of discussion. That there would be a tiered system if we don't meet 100% occupancy, right? So hypothetically, a student who's in an apartment could feasibly, possibly, may be able to stay even if they went to San Diego State, if there was availability, right? And so in the case of the college we went to, they had a tier system because they're in a multi-college district too. First it was, do you go to our college? Then it was, do you go to one of the colleges in the district? Then it was, do you go to one of the 4-year colleges or universities in the area? And so we are still in the early stages of learning from those colleges that have implemented student housing, because we know this is fairly new, except for 3 or 4 colleges in the Central Valley in Northern California. This is fairly new to community colleges. So we're still in the early stages of that. At some point, once construction is actually underway, because we expect it's going to be about a 2 to 3 year of actual construction, then Marciano and his team will get involved with the Michaels organization to work through those level of details.
And UCI, they do have an agreement similar to what we're discussing. UCI as they're continuing their education. They'll share they will share that information with the state.
Other questions?
We do talk about it in the future, but I think it might be best to have another.
Okay. Yeah, and John, you have a committee that includes faculty on that.
Yes, it is the ad hoc facilities planning committee with and there's a student health with the same.
So a couple of ways, if you have questions, certainly you can email John. He would be happy to answer them for those he can. There are some things we're just not there yet. in terms of the selection process and that sort of thing. We're nowhere near, we haven't even discussed that other than we are researching what other colleges are doing for that selection process. And so some of the questions we just may not be ready to answer, but we will. Anyone has to do.
Early in the beginning, we talked about the parking, special parking, without really facility.
Correct, because it's, we are largely, our college is on a series of earthquake faults. And to have built underground parking could have potentially doubled the cost of the project. And so in a perfect world, we're going to dissuade people from having cars. But that doesn't mean that if you have a car that you couldn't live there. That's one of the other things that we need to work through. It's not uncommon, particularly, and I remember this vividly, when I went to UC Davis, there were only certain dorms that you lived in that you could have cars. And many of the four-year colleges, particularly in the state, dissuade freshmen from having cars. So that we know that if 800 students had cars, we don't have enough parking spots on campus.
Adjacent parking structure. Some exact.
We're gonna hope that they don't have cars.
Yeah, but use
Use of public transportation or bikes.
It might be a situation where cars.
No, yeah, and I'm being facetious, right? I'm joking. That is something we need to work through. That question has routinely come up. And, just frankly, this is about today, this is a $300+ million project. To have built parking in this would have pushed it closer to 500 million. And if somebody has a good check that they want to write for 500 million, we would gladly build some parking underneath.
Put it into perspective, especially subterranean parking, probably be in the area of $30,000 per parking spot. That's the low. Pardon me?
It affects the overall height.
Oh, 8.
Sorry, can I ask one more question?
You can ask 2 or 3.
Okay, you mentioned that the grant that we were considering had different priorities. Our priorities are full-time veterans and foster youth permanent resident. Do you remember what their priorities were?
It was those. That's where it derives from. And then parents, single.
Parents would, that was
Yes.
also included. Oh, okay.
Great question.
Yeah, which is why we're having the presentation, right? Sometimes out of sight, out of mind. So we'll provide regular updates. This is the first of many. We had a rendering. We thought we needed to bring it back so that people could see. I'll talk a little bit more about it during convocation. There'll be an article that John is working with Caesar in the August newsletter. This will come back because as we get closer to, I would say, a year out, a lot of these things are gonna have to be worked out by then. First, we gotta have the bond, we gotta build the project, and then we can work through these other details. And there'll be some as there is with any decision, there'll be some very intense discussions about what do we do, right? Because I'm in support, right? I am the child of a single parent. So I'm absolutely in support of having housing for our students. The average age of a student at City College is 26. That is someone who is likely to have a child. But know that if that is the decision that is made, one, there are some liability potentials that come into play. And 2, that reduces the number of students who actually get to live in the facility. That is unfortunate, but that is the reality. And this doesn't have to be our only housing development. It is our first, because I would ideally like to build family housing for our employees, because we have employees who, frankly, with the cost of housing in San Diego, if we don't assist, may never be able to be able to San Diego. So this is our first. And we get to be literally first. So we're going to learn from those who did it already. There'll be a number of trips. I was in Napa last weekend. My colleague, the president of Napa College, who I've known for 20+ years, their housing development is opening this this fall, and they funded it entirely on bond program. So we'll go visit that when they're open and learn from. There's a lot on the, what I'll call the student services side, discipline side that we need to work through as well, like what happens if somebody does something? What happens if somebody's in a unit and they bring their partner in? I mean, those are things when you're dealing with housing. I'm sure Marcella could write a book of the things that we think about that are gonna come up in addition to what has already been posed.
Just a quick comment. I think this is just extraordinary. What we should recommend. That process. That's actually a way to study the shape of the flywheel. It makes it seem like not only tangible, but also the submission. So just,
Yeah, and thank you for that. If you remember, the initial mock-up had 2 towers. And there were going to be several more stories than currently. And that just wasn't feasible to build. And then we're in a fly zone. And so you may wonder if anyone says, well, I saw that you all broke ground for this housing development. One, there is work being done. Right now, we are in the environmental stages. So believe me, we're in a fly zone. So the number of environmental related assessments and reports that we need to do is probably going to go through December or January, I think is when we're proposed to be done with all those environmental factors, impact studies. And so that is underway. Just because you don't see building going up, before you can go up, you got to go through the state and the federal government's environmental project impact.
And anything above 7 or 8 floors becomes exponentially more expensive. That's why we top to this current, so I have to use more steel and also.
Yeah, and believe me, ask questions, because when I met with the folks, I wanted to try to get a volleyball court on the top.
He did on the roof. He wanted to-
And so the first rendering didn't have anything on the top. And so I was like, ooh, could we, we're gonna get beach volleyball at some point.
Right on
Could we
the edge.
build- And then, so when they came back, these are solar panels on the top, so they quickly went and put things on the top, so people didn't do as I did. I also wanted to do some joint use space, like grocery store or restaurants at the bottom. Again, that begins to add costs, and the permitting, things of that nature start to change. So no, please ask questions, because I raised a number of them to the folks who are doing this.
Last question.
I have two.
So will we be taking in Section 8 housing stipends or subsidies? I know that a lot of single parents do have those subsidies and they.
We had not considered that. That has to go through a federal approval process, and we're talking about different compliance standards and provisions. We hadn't talked about that, but I didn't.
No, let's pose that questions to the Michaels organization. I think and Marciano, I'm gonna lean on you if you don't have an answer. Typically, college housing falls into a separate area of housing that normally that doesn't meet the threshold of those programs. But these are programs that were established probably longer than many of us were alive. And so why not engage in that discussion as a possibility, being that many of our students may qualify for those programs? Let's present that to the Michaels organization and see, because I think in my time, we've seen colleges start taking SNAP and other things that at some point weren't at colleges as well. So why not pose that? No, thank you for that question. That has not come up in our discussions as well. And again, if you think of others, please, we are learning as we as we go. This is uncharted water. None of us have built, as far as I know, students. Sure.
Yeah, I've built at ASU, but not affordable student housing in the system.
Any other questions? Yeah, we will have regular updates as we have them to provide you all. John has a committee that has representatives of the constituency groups on it. I would ask them to provide your respective committees updates as well. But this is happening, folks. We will have student housing to house approximately a little less than 800. We'd like to house 800 students. Of course, if we do go in the direction of family housing, that would reduce that number significantly. But it is going to happen. We're going to have student housing by the fall of 2028, barring any unforeseen things happen. Next on the agenda,
Budget, you're close.
yes, John.
Right, we get to talk about numbers, guys. Are we lucky here? 3 items in a row. Year-end update. We're still closing out the year. We have about another week or so of processing journal vouchers, just truing up the trial balance. Where we stand today is we have a significant deficit that I did not project initially for various reasons. Most prominently being the augmentations that we received from the district and the funding rate for adjuncts. So it's twofold here, the adjunct funding rate and the augmentation for intercession, adjunct office hours. And more importantly, when positions are vacant throughout the fiscal year, we don't see but if they started the year vacant, that is. We do not see that budget. It is not loaded, it's kept at the district level. As positions are filled throughout the year, then we see that funding come over from their start date. However, if that position is backfilled, if we have an end, so we have an acting, that is not funded for us. So there are a lot of variances in the augmentation, and I'm working with Nancy and her team to true this up to get this number down, way down. It's all in salaries. And so I believe with this augmentation adjustment, if we correct it, that it will get our deficit down. So I'll have more updates, but we have about another year. The dust has not settled yet. That was my preliminary forecast as of today. And I will provide an update to the council once we have the hard close and we have a number that we've settled. There's also, we're moving money back and forth between GFU and GFR, meaning there are some charges that are hitting our GFU, some salaries that are hitting our GFU that should be hitting GFR. That is a huge process for us because it's very manual. We have to go in line, by month, by person and identify not only the individuals in the departments, but we have to calculate the benefits. So it's a toilsome task for us to go in and true it up. It's not going to happen by next week, but I know some of us at the table here have had questions about processing JVs and expenses, salaries hitting their respective accounts or wrong accounts. We're working to process those journal vouchers as soon as we can, up to the minute, late into the day. Any questions about year end or the processes or the status of anything that you may be aware of that you're just waiting on an answer on that may be outstanding, or just something that is burning that you need to know about in the budget, a year end budget? Yes. It's what we're processing, it really has no impact on out-of-state students. It's an impact on what the respective program or department, what they were budgeted for their salaries, vacancies, backfills. The classes will continue, classes will be filled, we'll always have instructors for classes, so there's not a very students. Yes, ma'am.
We're scheduled to meet about this tomorrow.
Yes,
and
we
then
are.
We're going to teach you everything.
Yes, we're gonna cram one entire, yes.
I just wanted to invite you to attend. It's so if you want. I invite you to that space to learn about what's in these terms. Crash course in budgets, but if you want to do both of them.
We're actually gonna do something.
It's already scheduled.
During your retreat that you're having on Friday,
Is that with the Dom meeting?
that you're doing.
Okay.
But it is important for all of us to be as knowledgeable as possible. And if you had a chance to read my last update, I talked about leaning into budgets. This is going to be a big couple of budget years for us because we're coming out of a period where community colleges had more money than we've ever had in the history of community colleges. And we're going into an era that we, at a minimum, are going to be stabilized. And understand what stabilized means. When you, I mean, just imagine just like our homes, right? If you receive the same kind, and this is a great explanation, I hope, of inflation. If your paycheck doesn't change, but your mortgage all of a sudden changes, or your car insurance or your car payment, that is what's called deficit spending. And unfortunately, we're entering into a phase where we are likely to have deficit spending because our revenues are going to be static at best. At best, we're going to receive the same amount of money. But people are getting step increases. The cost of supplies are increasing, the cost of electricity is increasing. And so we are likely to have less money, even though we're receiving the same amount. Does that make sense to folks? The other thing I would add is the budget deficit is significant. And Mona, you and I will talk more about it in person. We don't meet this Thursday. I think we're meeting next Thursday because I'm traveling. I will have more details for you about that, in addition to whatever John is going to share with you tomorrow. But the deficit is significant, and we're working, kudos to admin services and all the managers who are working overtime to ensure that we are good stewards of the resources that we receive. And so I'm going to need everybody's help on College Council, that when your colleagues come to you asking for positions or asking for additional budgets, that you partner with us to explain to them first, is it in program review? Is it in the prioritization in your department? And B, C, I guess I'm on number 3 now. What are you proposing that we not do in lieu of doing what need to be done? Because that's how serious this situation is going to be. It's not a bad situation. I've had far worse. We're not cutting.
No, we're not cutting, and I just really wanted to allay any concerns with that with Dolly, because the district, keep in mind, we're part of the district. The district does have reserved for surplus to help compensate for that shortfall, or whatever it's going to be. It's going to be lower than what it is now. We're just going to have to really unlearn a lot of processes over the past few years in the COVID environment, and relearn existing policies that we may have gotten away from over the years. I thought we were getting in the weeds in the training, and actually we were. Now I'm going to have to get into the roots of the training. Like, I'm going to have to do some forensic accounting investigation on a micro level to make sure that we write our processes, especially after this fiscal year.
Yeah.
This fiscal year 25, the 24-25 will be good. It's 25-26.
And let me allude to one of the things that I'm going to request that John does, and that we need everybody's help. We study budgets religiously, and there's something called a burn rate, meaning we try to project based on our monthly expenses. And what we start to see a pattern of is, normally you can divide the college's budgets into 12 months, and you can predict to a certain extent how much you're spending each month, just like your own budget. What we see a pattern of, and where we need to frankly hold people accountable to, and we need people's help, is people who are turning in pass sheets or expenditures or expenses. Let's say John went to a conference in September, but he turns in his request for reimbursement in May. That throws all of our projections off, because we're like, well, John went to that conference in September. We don't, and if John winds up being 30 Johns turn in their request for reimbursements in May, and we're projecting monthly how much we have to get to the finish line, so to speak. And so I'm gonna be asking John to work with the managers and the faculty leadership and the leadership throughout the college, that these things really should be done within 30 days. That helps us make the necessary adjustments in January, February. Whereas if we get hit with an extra $1 million worth of expenses in May or June, there's not a lot we can do to adjust for going over budget. Does that make sense? So what we're seeing is a pattern of people holding on to things, and that includes requests for payment for ESUs for largely our wonderful faculty, that folks will do work in September, October, November, and for some reason hold on to those expense reports or those timesheets. And then we get hit with 30, 40, 50 of them in May or June, May or June. That doesn't allow us to account, because that isn't been accounted for, because John and his team, they don't know that people have performed work until the time card and the timesheet. And so we're going to be putting some things in writing that will request greater adherence to what we call reconciling things. And normally in a budget, just like your home, we normally reconcile in 30 days. Anything beyond 60 days, we don't think is coming. And so that would be an example of what would cause an organization to hold budget. I tried to say that as high level as I could.
You did a good job.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that offline, but I'll just say real quickly to contradict myself. We are finding that people are performing work that haven't been authorized, which again makes it so that we can't predict that a expense is coming. And all work in a union environment or otherwise should be authorized before performed. But we'll handle those cases. And Mona, get ready. We'll have a very interesting conversation about some of these things in our next meeting. As well, as we will with the managers as well. Any other budget questions? Not a bad budget by any stretch of the imagination. Just coming out of a period where we had an abundance of resources, going into a period that we are likely to be doing what is known as deficit spending. So please, folks, as you think about what your needs are, continue to advocate for the things you want and you need. To put it as an example, if we just look at the number of employee requests that we have, it totals $20 million. That money has to come from somewhere. So let's continue to use the college's processes to bring forth what those needs happen to be. Speaking of employee requests, John, Marciano, Aaron, do you want to provide a brief update on hiring? Let's start with you, Aaron.
To say within policy, we have a lot of searches that are in multiple points of process. Some that are in the review stage, some that are about to hit interviews, and some that are post final interview, and they're all going wonderful. We've got a great group of people going through this.
For me, I just quick updates that we thank you to Mona in particular, who has helped me. We're working to post the Dean of Student Development Matriculation position. And so she has been working to get the faculty identified for that. And then Sean and Daniel will select the spot and classify folks to serve on that committee. So that will be our hope is to bring the committee together so that we can actually get the posting out. We are also working on our posting for the Director of Outreach and Promise. That will soon be out there. And our newest one, our Welcome City, we had a resignation in Welcome City. Many folks know David Howard, who was our Welcome City case manager. He has resigned, and so that now leaves a vacancy in Welcome City. So our hope is to move pretty quickly to refill that position. As many of you know, that was a non-tenured track full-time case manager position, and so the hope is to go back out again, and in particular because Mike being the only other person in there with the case load that they currently have with Rockland City is gonna be really difficult. So we're working on hiring some adjuncts while we do the full-time assessment for that. That should come soon. And then I'm happy to also report that we now have a new Next Up coordinator in Oscar Duran, who will be joining, I believe, August 1st. Will take over as the Next Up coordinator in EOPS. And then we've got Dr. Charlins, who has taken over as the Transfer Center coordinator. And then we've got, many folks know that Alicia Antonio became the supervisor in admissions and records. So we've got many vacancies there that have been. I guess the other one that I will share is that some folks know that Edwidge Depart has now transitioned over to be the interim scholarship coordinator. So she's moved from outreach. Sheila Davis, as many of you know, had been our outreach person or our scholarship coordinator, and has moved over onto the instruction side, working in Jesse's area on an interim basis as well. While she's doing that, Edward is now going to have the opportunity to go over and do that. So we've got given some folks some opportunities to try on some new paths, and excited about all the changes that are happening on the student services side. But as many of you know, our hiring feels like that is our full-time job. Is we're on searches all the time, trying to as we get one vacancy filled, we seem to have another vacancy that comes open. But that's always exciting, because that means that people are moving on and moving up. So getting opportunities to do other things. So, but thank you, Mona, for helping.
It was a lot. Glad we got most of ours done. We have one that's currently open, which is John Boyce's replacement, the environmental occupational health and safety coordinator. That was to close actually this Friday. We're going to extend it out for 2 weeks, as we only yielded as of today 10 applications. So we need a margin. Last time we posted, we got up to 30. So we're going to extend that for a couple of weeks. John will continue to be the point of contact. He is with the district still, and he helps, he serves each campus, and he has been a point of contact, double teaming with Jay, but he should be the primary. Speaking of Jay, Stephen Devers actually has been promoted to the campus RFO. We haven't seen an announcement come from district. He is still a district employee, but he is assigned to our campus. So I'll be sending out his bio.
Can you explain what that is?
The RFO, the regional facilities officer, that's Jay Purnell. So they're involved with facilities, maintenance, custodial. They supervise and landscaping.
Maybe we should invite him to a future college council meeting so that people know, for reference, being in a multi-college district, the bookstore, campus police, facilities report to our vice chancellor over facilities with a dotted line to John. And so this person is being promoted and will be over facilities and operations for our college and the College of Continuing Education, if I'm not mistaken. Don't we share?
I'm not sure what that procedure is.
Okay. But it would be good for people to know who he is if you don't. He's already an employee here, so you've probably been seeing him. But as you think about having concerns for or needs for a discussion about facilities, it would be good for everybody.
Yes, I'll send that out. I was waiting for
Yeah.
the district to take the lead on that, but I think we should get it out for our campus here. And he was we had 3 internal candidates from the campus and 5 district wide, so it's pretty good. That's it.
Great. Any questions about hiring?
Just a question, Karen, can you send me I think you're referring to a list, or maybe the list is in your head of where all the hires are? The different stages. I know Tilly typically has a spreadsheet. Can you send that to me?
Yes, it's all up in the spreadsheet. I'm just careful because we're at different points.
Yeah.
And for instance, there might be people just completed an interview and saying too much. They'll be like, That's me, maybe I didn't get it, maybe I did get it. Just
Okay.
want to-
So what I would like to do, Aaron, to Mona's question, is just get with all three VPs and we have a standard document that we can send, and let's send that document. I actually hope that we would have it today, so let's just go ahead and send it out to all the college council so that everybody has it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna skip 8 and go to 9 and then come back to 8.
Well, 9 is our fall admissions registration. We're calling it our admissions registration and retention events. Because we are, so on Friday, August 16th from 10 to 2, we are inviting students who took summer classes and maybe didn't enroll in fall, students who are not at 12 units yet. All of our special population groups are going to be inviting their students to like EOPS, Cal Work next up, hopefully working with our learning communities who went to Moja. So any students who are still needing to add classes are going to be invited back to campus on that day. And we're gonna have counselors available to meet with students who need to do that. Financial aid will be working with students to make sure that they have completed the new FAFSA, if there's anything that they need to do that. Clarissa and all her ambassadors will be there in the labs to be able to work with students. And our hope is that, you know, we typically get this kind of last rush in August where students say, oh, classes are starting, I need to do something. And so our hope is to get them on that day to show up and say, like, let's get this all going so that when classes actually start, that you're ready to go. And so it is a student services, really an all college event, but student services is taking the lead. And one of the things that we're doing is working with on the instruction side, that if there are faculty who are still needing to fill classes, like this would be a good time for faculty to come and talk to students and say, hey, like there are seats left in my class, and I'm trying to fill this. And so we will have a list of all of those classes that are still open that students can look at. Counseling will be able to look at those things. So again, sometimes students just need to clear something, and so they'll be able to work with counseling. So all three of my deans are working on this event with Larissa in outreach to get it planned, and then Lori in student affairs is helping us with the kind of the fun components. So where the plan is to have food and to have some different, like a resource fair and things, so folks can come and learn about the college, learn about programs, and get enrolled. And from the retention standpoint, all those students who are not currently at 12 units or who need, maybe they're taking 3 units and they can take 6 units and increase their financial aid, we're going to work with them to be able to do that. DSPS will work with their students, as we know that not all their students can be at 12, so they'll have their team there to be able to work with their DSPS students to make sure that they have their accommodation letters and things set up before classes start. So we're excited. We've done this in a couple of different iterations over the last couple of years, and now we're starting to get in a cycle of knowing how this is going to work. So, but Friday, August 16th, 10 to 2, which is our day that we typically have our extended hours. They're usually that Friday and Saturday, the 2 Fridays and Saturday before the start of school is when we do our extended hours, and so this is part of the extended hours that we're going to be doing.
Any questions for Marcio?
Questions about content. Just unfortunately, ASU will be due, that's our ASU retreat. But do you know if someone's working on a flyer?
We are, so we're working, Caesar's out this week, but we hope to have our flyer completed. And once we have all the services that are gonna be open, and so we'll be sending that out to everyone in social media that we push down. So,
Okay.
and we've been working with that on, so we know that there's an ASG template, but we're on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would, Marciano, ask you to work with Mona and Aaron. Mona, it would be a great help when Marciano sends out the flyer, if you would be so inclined to follow that up with communication to faculty. Because he hit on a key point that this will be, frankly, the best opportunity for faculty who need students to interact with students. It also will be the best opportunity to welcome our students to campus. Imagine people either coming back or not sure if they should go to college. This would be a nice warm welcome. So if we could encourage all of College Council to do 30 minutes, do 45 minutes, that you could be the one smile, you could be the one welcome, that could be the difference. As Dahlia mentioned, I'm going to be speaking to ASG during their retreat, and I'm going to be right here shaking hands and welcoming students. And so, Marciano, if you can work with Mona, that would be a great help in addition to what Marciano says. Mona, he would be willing to send the message to faculty for their participation, particularly those whose classes need additional students.
I always share that one of the interesting things that I see at the beginning of every semester is that we have students who will show up, that first week of classes and saying like, I'm here, I need to take classes. And you're like, what have you done? And they've graduated and it's like, they're thinking the high school model, right? That you show up on the first day and someone gives you a schedule. And then they realize, oh no, like I could have been picking classes a while ago. And this is really what this event is, having it on the 16th is, it gives them enough time to enroll in the classes, go get their books ordered. So they're not feeling so like they're scrambling that first few days. And so we're excited to be able to kind of do this. And like I said, it really is a kind of the village effort. Hey, we're all here, we're gonna help you get through this so that you're ready to go when classes start.
Want to also, in your packets or handouts are the latest enrollment management data. If I can call your attention to this side, you've got on the front side, you've got this document on this side. And if you didn't get this electronically, I would ask Angel to send it out. She just got it herself. This came from a meeting today. This is great news. We are trending in the district up significantly. Shout out to the marketing team, who hands down is the best marketing team of any community college in the country. Same for the outreach team, Clarissa, Genevieve, and their teams are doing amazing work. You'll see our head count is up significantly. All of the numbers are up significantly, most of which are double digits. That means a couple of things. One, we're going to have more students this year than we had last year. We already know, and I'm waiting for Marcelo to send me the actual number. I found out this morning that we are going to have more promised students than we had last year as well. So that adds to the different campus feel when you have what we'll call traditional college students coming out of high school. And so kudos to the outreach team, the marketing team, everybody working on enrollment management. Enrollment management is absolutely all of our job to keep the students, get them here and help them accomplish their educational goals. And so you got some data here looking at the both district. We ended the year about 91% of our target, still a great number. City College is likened to the little engine that could when it comes to enrollment, as Marciano has already portrayed. A lot of our students show up later in the process. So these numbers are even more impressive considering the behavior patterns of most of our students. But we are seeing marked improvement with enrollment. We just need to keep folks here once they come. And that's all of our jobs as well. Any questions about the fall registration events? And kudos to the counselors. They've been doing this for a number of years. I think this is going back to a model that the counselors led many years before COVID hit. Last on the agenda is fall convocation. Planning is well underway. We invite you to attend on Thursday, August 15th. We are going back to the Seville Theater. And so please arrive early. Space is going to be limited. We have some surprises that day. We have a number of meaningful presentations that I don't want to give away so that you come and see. One involves a new bachelor's program. One involves a retirement. There are a number of exciting things that we have planned for fall convocation. So please spread the word. We've been doing it on the 8 building patio a number of years, but we are going back to the Seville Theater. We will have lunch on the AH quad after convocation. And Marco, you want to share who our guest speaker is going to be talking about AI?
Yeah, so Trudy Radke, the pronouns are they, them, They work at Moore Park College as an instructional technologist and designer. I got to hear them speak at the online teaching conference on AI, and they're extremely knowledgeable on the topic. And they actively work with faculty, staff, and students on AI literacy on their campus and with a few other colleges who reached out to them. Their keynote is titled Leading the AI Literacy Revolution, the Essential Role of Community Colleges. And they have about a 30 to 40 minute presentation and talk with a question and answer at the end.
Anyways, there'll be more updates as the date gets closer. We typically mail home an invite to all of the faculty, particularly because many of them are off schedule. And we look to welcome all of our new employees and introduce them going back to January. So that'll be a featured part of it as well. Regularly get questions about who we hired, that sort of thing. So we welcome all of our hires. We have a number of faculty starting this fall as well that we're excited about. Any questions about fall convocation? Hearing none, our next meeting is scheduled
August 6th.
for August 6th. We will see you that, wow, doesn't it feel like it's like 2 weeks away? And we look forward to seeing you all then. Yeah, and anyone else who has any.
Someone
updates?
reminded me, thank you, Clarissa, who's watching online, reminded me that our event is actually, it's opening day is gonna be our fall registration event. So it's gonna be kind of like opening day at the ball game, as the theme. So the plan is to have all the team and everything that's gonna kind of follow the theme, and we're working on some really cool swag for the event. So for everyone, students and faculty.
Any other updates? Want to publicly thank everyone who participated in the Pride Parade. It's probably one of the funnest things that I get to do for work. City College was well represented, led by our student government body president, as well as our vice president of students. And so to everyone who participated in the parade, thank you for supporting all of our employees, and that we carry out this theme of you belong here. It's not just a theme, we live it, we believe it. And that was just another example of many activities that we have to be an inclusive college. With that said, if there are no other updates for the good of the order, we will see you all in 2 weeks on August 6th. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Ask.